First, I would like to thank Jim and Avner for accepting this paper. It is a true pleasure to present the paper, Gender Dynamic in Crowdfunding Kickstarter, Evidence on Entrepreneur, Investors, Deals, and Taste-Based Discrimination. It is a joint work with Marom and Alicia, Robb. What I'm going to do today, first of all, I'm going to give a bit of introduction and to motivate you why I think it is an important topic. Then I'll talk a little bit about crowdfunding, Kickstarter, and our data. I'll speak about gender and entrepreneurs, gender and investors, and I'll try to convince you that what you see is not only statistical discrimination, but also there is a component of taste-based discrimination, and then I'll sum. So if you look at the general data of ownership of business in the US, women make less than 30% of business owner. If you condition that they should have at least one employee, this is even lower. If you condition on specific areas, this is even lower. If you look at the investor side, you'll see that relatively low amount of the angel community are female, and if you go to the VC, this is even lower. So no matter if you look at the entrepreneurship side or at the investor side, women are clearly not represented at the same magnitude as their portion in the population. This is actually the front page of Newsweek this week. So they were kind of nice to arrange that for me. Even the shoes are red as mine, all nice. One of the argument, obviously not the only one, but one of the arguments for the statistics that we just saw is that capital belongs to the old boys club, and that may affect the ability of female to raise capital and their presence in the investor community. What is crowdfunding? The idea behind crowdfunding is to use the internet and the social media to raise a small amount of money from many investors. Given that this is the idea and given the fact that it's all out there on the internet, many that advocated for crowdfunding mechanism argue that crowdfunding has the potential to democratize the marketplace. In this project, we ask, indeed. So with respect to the motivation, we think that, obviously we are biased, but we think that we have interesting research questions with respect to gender. First, and probably most important to the academic community, but also for policy as well. We think that crowdfunding is interesting, is growing. We are going to use one of the leading crowdfunding platform as quite interesting lab. We will have more than 20,000 projects to look at. And what is nice about the platform that we are using, that it is all or nothing. You either raise the money that you ask for or you get nothing. Another thing that we think that is nice and we contribute to the literature is that if we look at the timeline of financing a venture, we are looking really here at the beginning. I wrote pre-seed financing, but this is really pre-seed financing. This will be equivalent to the friends and family stage. And normally it is very hard to collect data on that particular stage. And this will be the equivalent of that, so it will be interesting to see some of the dynamic. Just to give you an anecdotal example, one of the ventures that raised money via Kickstarter and actually started here, later went via angels and so forth, and just recently acquired by Facebook for $2 billion. Not bad. We are going to use a text mining approach to analyze some of the data that I'm going to discuss. Just with respect to the literature, we are related, obviously, to the entrepreneurship and financing of new venture. We are related to gender and discrimination, and we are related to the growing crowdfunding academic literature. Going back to crowdfunding, a little bit about it. So it is evolving in the last recent year. A research company that investigating crowdfunding platform documented that in April 2012 there were around 452 crowdfunding platforms around the world. In the fall semester, I was visiting NYU Shanghai, and I was told there, I cannot confirm that, but I was told there that in China alone, they were documenting around 1,000 crowdfunding platforms. So it is growing. Also, with respect to the amount that is being raised, the estimation was that in 2012 it was 2.7 billion, in 2013 around 5 billion. So again, growing dramatically. Now, it is important to realize that when we say crowdfunding, we actually mean many things. So under the umbrella of crowdfunding, there are different types of markets. The first one is the donation model, in which you actually give money and expect nothing. Kiva will be an example for that. The other extreme will be the equity model. Equity model is not widely spread because of regulation. There is a limit to the amount of people that you can actually suggest your investment, otherwise it is a public company, and obviously doesn't make sense for this type of project. Regulators right now are considering that. There is the lending model, which Prosper or Lending Club belongs to that, in which you actually finance a loan. And the top model, and this is actually the model that we are going to focus in this research, is the reward model, in which you get something for your investment. Why do I say something? Because each venture will post a whole menu of what you will get with respect to what you invest. It can be from a thank you note to $1 investment, to be an executive producer on a documentary film if you invest more. So it depends on the project, depends on the amount that you invest. You see the whole menu, you decide how much you invest, and according to that, this is what you'll get. So this is actually the leading financing model for entrepreneurship project right now, and we are going to focus on that. As I said, we are going to focus on Kickstarter. It's considered one of the leading platform for financing entrepreneurship project. And what we did is we downloaded data from Kickstarter. Kickstarter didn't cooperate with us, so it's not that we got the data from them. All the data that was downloaded was actually downloaded by web crawlers and additional custom software that were designed or adapted for this particular project. We downloaded approximately 60,000 successful projects, ongoing project, and we also were able to gather information around 4,000 failed projects. Now, as you can see, there is a red star here because Kickstarter doesn't keep failed projects on the web page. So in order to get the information about the failed project, what we had to do is the following. If there was one investor that invested in any particular successful project and also invested in a failed project, via his or her page, we can actually track the failed project. So why there is that red star? Because if there are projects, and they are, that certain people invested in them, but none of them invested in a successful project, they are not on our screen. Or there were also projects that received zero investment whatsoever. We don't know anything about them. Now, if you think about it, we can actually draw the universe to really terribly not successful project, and successful project. So we don't have the terribly not successful project. We have the non-successful project and the successful project. We have information about approximately 22,000 entrepreneurs and over 1 million investors. Now, Kickstarter projects are for profit. However, many of them are artistic projects, even though they are for profit. And Kickstarter require you to assign the category of your project when you put it on Kickstarter. So we have 13 categories that they can be divided to 3 main categories: artistics, game, and technology. This is actually the information about Kickstarter from its beginning until when we downloaded the data. No matter how you look at it, the activity is growing and it continues to grow. After we downloaded via our custom software and all those crawlers, all that information, the next step was to try to qualify and quantify the gender. So what we had to do is first we removed all those projects in which the entrepreneur was a company. That was done by removing all the LTD project. Then we extracted the first name. And then what we use web dictionaries that were developed for other projects. Apparently there are several of them that can tell you, according to the first name, what is the gender of that particular person. We did not develop them, we just used them, but as an additional robustness test, we picked 1,000 projects in which the face of the entrepreneur was available, and we asked additional reviewers to analyze that, and those dictionaries are actually doing a pretty good job. So given these dictionaries, we were able to classify 13,533 projects by gender, and additional amount of gender, around 539, had more than one entrepreneur as the leading entrepreneur. We will divide them to 2 female, 2 male, 1 female, 1 male, or 1 male, 1 female. We later care about the order in which these names are in the pitch. So given all this data, what are the questions that we ask? The first natural question to ask is, are female entrepreneurs financing more or fewer venture via this online platform compared with male entrepreneurs? And are there gender differences in the project category industry? Now, what you'll see in red star is where female are dominating the category, and what you'll see in blue arrow is the categories that male are dominating. As you can see, female are dominating dance, fashion, food. Maybe not surprising, or maybe is surprising, male are dominating technology, music, game, film, design, and comics. So if you think about it, this is really stereotype picture of the world, right? Overall, female projects account for around 35% of the projects. The next question that we wanted to ask is, do female entrepreneurs have similar goal compared to male entrepreneur, whether they raise similar amount of money, and what about the probability of success of raising this amount? Now, in Kickstarter, we are going to define success as reaching the goal, because you either reach the goal and get the money, or you get nothing. So on average, and right now I'm giving really broad averages, male ask for more money than female. They received on average more money than female. However, if you look what was the probability of success in our data, female were actually having higher probability of success compared to male. This is true for the overall sample, which we give the statistics in the introduction. Then we did it via each categories, calculated the average around these categories. It's different number, but the same direction. It is in the main chapter. But then I assume that you will ask me, you know what? What you just said is that female ask for less. So maybe this is not that surprising that they have higher probability, especially, and this is true, that the higher the goal, the lower the probability to raise it. So the next thing that we did was a match sample. We took a female project and we matched it with a male project according everything that we thought will be relevant. Main category, subcategory, the country of the entrepreneur. The time, we wanted it to have approximately the same month that they raised the money, and fundraising goals. So the only difference will be the gender of the entrepreneur. Again, we calculated the probability of success, and again, the probability of success of female was higher than male. So we don't think that it's actually the goal which is driving the higher probability. So we talked a little bit about gender and entrepreneurs. Let's discuss gender and investors. Again, we wanted to see how many female investors are out there and what are their distribution, in what they invest in. Again, we were able to classify not all the names, but we were able to classify approximately 81%. So we have a substantial amount of investors in our database. Approximately 45% of them are female. However, if we condition about being more active in the platform, male become way more dominant. Again, if you do a very simple statistics and calculate the amount compared to the categories, very stereotype picture, right? Where female invest at? Dance, fashion, food. How surprising. Where are the male? Comics, games, technology. The next thing that we wanted to understand is whether female have higher tendency to invest in female-led project, whether male have higher tendency to invest maybe in female project or male project. I mean, given the fact that you saw the tables before, some of the picture is already clear, but female tend to invest both in female project and male project. Male tend to invest in male projects. What you see in this graph is that the more female-oriented the project is, the more you'll see that it is dominated by female investors. So this is a project of 2 female, 1 female, female male, male female, 1 male, 2 male. You see the trend. To do it a little bit more formal and control for other relevant variable, what you see here, we estimated the share of female investor as a function of all that we thought was relevant, whether it is all female project or all male project, dummy for that, the goal, whether the staff picked it. Apparently in Kickstarter, the staff pick project that they like, so we thought maybe that has an effect as well, whether it was considered a popular project, and of course we control for all the categories and the country, and again, you see in the regression what you saw previously. The more female-oriented the project, the more you see the tendency of female investors to be the majority there. So let me summarize our findings so far. We saw that there are differences in the participation in the platform. We saw that there is differences in what sectors each gender operate at. We saw that there are differences in the funding goals, in the funding raise, in the success rate, and that who invests in whom. And now to the next question. From all that I showed you so far, can we say anything about whether what we see is discrimination? Now, in the economic literature, obviously there is the statistical discrimination or economic discrimination, which is not really a discrimination, but there is actually a reasoning for what we see something that may look like discrimination. And in this particular case, some of the male here, I believe that what's going on in their mind is, give me a break. if you women will go and do technology project, we will invest. If you're staying in fashion, food, dance, who cares, right? So this is not discrimination, it's just your choice of picking this area, and this is why we do not participate. Others may argue that, yeah, this may be going on, but on top of that, there might be additional gender attitude bias, and this is taste-based discrimination. So obviously it's very, very difficult to say what's going on in a case like that, and what we decided to do is to attack it from a different direction. And let me tell you what we did. What we did is we conducted a survey. We went to the sociology literature, and they developed different gender equality survey and picked questions about gender equality that they normally use in their survey. So for example, all in all, family life suffer when the woman has a full-time job, or a preschool child is likely to suffer if his or her mother works. Having a full-time job is the best way for a woman to be an independent person. A woman and her family would all be happier if she goes out to work, and both the husband and wife should contribute to the household income. What we did is, again, we used all our crawlers and collected all the possible emails that we could from the entrepreneurs and the investors in this platform. So if anyone put his email in the profile, we got it, and we sent them a survey that consisted many questions, among them these questions as well. What is important to realize, and before I forget, we received we received 160 survey responses, and it is important to realize that it is not that the female are feminist and the male are chauvinist. Actually, they are all over the place with respect to each of these questions. I'm just showing you the first two. Family life suffer when a woman has a full-time job. This is the female, this is the male, all over. The next thing that we did with this question is, and again, it's not something that we invented. We actually followed the sociologists because we understood that in this particular case, whatever we will do can cause some emotions. So we followed what they normally do and calculated for each individual their gender equality measure. Now, out of the 160 responses that we received for the survey, we couldn't match all of them with a specific project because we asked them in what you invested, and some will say, oh, in documentary film about the Middle East conflict. Great, there are more than one like that. So we only use the one that we can actually exactly match, that they say exactly which project they invested at, and we have that exact project in our database, and hence our sample reduced a little bit. We use the individual measure to estimate the following question. The independent variable is whether the entrepreneur is a female or a male. We do control whether the investor is a female, and we add that additional variable, which is the gender inequality measure. And what is interesting, even though this is not a large sample, and even though we allow that there might be some other reason why a female will invest in female or a male will invest in male, gender equality seems to add additional explanatory variable. We repeated the same exercise, not only using logic and probit regression, but also discriminant analysis. Again, the most important factor was actually whether the investor is a female or a male, but immediately after that, gender equality measure played an important role. So given that, what we infer from that is that in addition to the statistical discrimination, in addition to the reason that, hey, those females are actually doing project at the area that we are not that interested at, there is that additional perception that may play an important role. And when we decompose the sample to female versus male, it's actually important for the male decision, not for the female decision. So let me summarize our funding. It seems that there is a greater participation of female in this particular platform, definitely on the investor side, but also maybe on the entrepreneurship side. Given said that, maybe I should be a little bit more cautious because, again, we are comparing it to the friends and family stage in which we know relatively very little about. We see major differences in what are the type of project female are trying to raise money for, and this is actually quite consistent also with the general statistics that we see out there. So crowdfunding, or in particular Kickstarter that we study, didn't change the picture completely. It's very stereotyped yet. We see distinct differences in all possible aspects that we looked at. Investors, entrepreneurs, where they participate, who invest in whom, and so forth. And we think that, and this is normally the hardest thing to show, that there is also taste-based discrimination. It is not only statistical discrimination. And one of my colleagues told me, you know what? If you don't buy the lottery card, don't go and cry. I mean, it's female fault. And my answer to that was, you know what? Probably yes, but if you think about it, if we both compete in a very, very competitive race, and it is very, very competitive in the sense that even the shoes matter. And when female is going to the race, she gets a small bag with very, very tiny stones. Not that many, it's not the most important factor, but they exist there. If it is very competitive and every small detail matter, it will affect the outcome. And if she is rational, she may not participate in that race to start with, because she knows that when she'll get there, that's what she will face. Thank you.